Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As we welcome you once again to the airwaves of Salam Media. It's Wednesday night. It's in conversation with myself, Inayet Wadee, and once again hosting a panel discussion this evening. We will be covering two topics. Shortly, we will be talking about the upcoming protests at the Embassy of the United Arab Emirates that is due to take place this coming Friday. And during the second half of the broadcast, we will be talking about Sheikh Rashid Ghannouchi, Tunisia. We will be linking up with his daughter, Yusra Ghannouchi, and there have been global calls for his release. But coming back to what we intend doing in the next hour is to take a closer look at the United Arab Emirates. Now, this is with regard to their complicity in the genocide that has been unfolding, and as relentless as this genocide has been, just so relentless has the UAE been in its support for Israel, and to the extent that it is tantamount to the betrayal of the people of Palestine and the Palestinian cause for liberation. So we've put together a panel, and this is the organizing team as well that has been working very, very hard to actually put this protest action together. And this is under the banner of the Action Coalition, led by Khalid Vawda, Social Intifada, also Maulana Ebrahim Moosa from the Palestine Solidarity Network, Shamshad Sayed, South African Women United for Gaza, and we're also joined by independent journalist and activist Paul Eccles this evening. So as we await our guests on screen, just to remind our viewers and our listeners this evening that this protest is absolutely crucial. This is important. We have been talking about this for a very, very long time, and there are a number of issues that we will be unpacking during the course of the broadcast. Brother Khalid, Sister Shamshad, Maulana Ebrahim, and Paul, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome, and we do appreciate your time.
Walaikum salam.
Yes, Khalid, obviously the protest action was at the UAE, was in the making for a very, very long time. And over the last 21 or 22 months, we've seen a very, very strong case of complicity and betrayal of the people of Palestine as far as the UAE is concerned. And after the protest action that we had at the Egyptian embassy, we knew that the UAE would be the next target. And let's just go provide an overview as to why this protest action is so important, so crucial, Khalid.
Well, the UAE hasn't just been complicit in the last year and a half. The UAE has been, so just a bit of historical context for the viewers and the listeners. The Egyptians signed accords with Israel in the 70s, which resulted in the assassination of Anwar Sadat. The Jordanians signed a treaty with the Israelis in the 90s. Other nations have been rushing forward through these Abraham Accords that were proposed by the Trump presidency, the previous Trump presidency, and obviously with his spokesman for the region at the time, or one of the chief coordinators, was his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. But since the UAE signed the Abraham Accords and so-called Abraham Accords, I'll explain why, in 2020, nobody has risen, and you'll excuse my language here, but nobody has risen to the top of the pile of filth that we have in terms of governments in Muslim lands than the UAE so quickly. With the rapid pace with which the UAE has risen in the 5 years that they've been signatories to the Abraham Accords, outstrips the complicity, the subservience, the gatekeeping of the Egyptians, the Jordanians, the Saudis, all of the nations in the Middle East who have military capabilities but have done nothing to support the people of Palestine except talk at conferences. So the United Arab Emirates has actually been in cahoots with Israel even way before that. They've just made it official since 2020. And what happened, if you recall, around that time when the accords were signed with Israel, the extension of partnership or rather the extension of brotherhood, as they called it, with the Israelis. The first plane that flew between the two countries was decked in Israeli colors and Emirati colors. The children at the schools in the Emirates were encouraged to sing songs of brotherhood. Palestinian produce in the supermarkets in the UAE, in Dubai and Abu Dhabi and elsewhere, that was from the West Bank, was labeled Israeli products. That's how far they went in terms of their complicity. The reason why the UAE is so dangerous is because you don't see the UAE coming. They don't have boots on the ground. They're not committing militaries. What they are doing is spreading their dirty tentacles all over the region, and they are playing games in various countries. Palestine is critical, obviously, and we'll speak about that, but they're doing similar in Sudan. They've had their tentacles in Libya as well. So they're using money and they're using influence to be able to play political games and to weave politics in various countries in the region. Real dirty politics from the side of the UAE. There's a control that they're pulling from the background, which people need to be aware of. And unfortunately, many unsuspecting people are not aware of this. Hence, the mass tourism and the mass investment and the mass finance that takes place with the UAE from people from around the world, whether it's the West, whether it's South Africa, all over the world. So a lot of people make use of the UAE thinking it's this wonderful Muslim country. And I say Muslim in inverted commas because there's nothing Islamic about the country except the identity of some of the population. But the practices are far away from Islam. So the UAE, in terms of the cooperation with the Israelis specifically, it's accelerated in the last few years, and more so during the genocide. And this is what brings us to why the protest is taking place on Friday and why you're seeing a growing call for condemnation of the United Arab Emirates, not just in South Africa, but from around the world, where people are now calling out the UAE for their role, number one, in financial relations with Israel. So just one example would be the settlement building. There are companies that are involved in settlement building. The United Nations blacklisted a whole lot of them, more than 100. The UAE is still trading actively with those companies in contravention of international law. That's just one. The spyware that they're involved in, which Israel is really good at developing spyware. You'll recall Pegasus spyware that was developed by the NSO firm, which was found out to be spying on the phones of diplomats from Western countries, which became a huge scandal. This Pegasus software was developed by Israelis, and the Israeli guys who developed the spyware and the tech for the Israeli government are from Unit 8200. Unit 8200 is the arm that develops cyber warfare within the Israeli Defense Forces. So the UAE, within some of the companies that they've got that are using spyware, are actually employing ex-Unit 8200 members, as well as ex-NSA members from the US. So the reason people are upset and people are angry is because while this is going on, while our kids' limbs are being blown off and they're being shredded to bits in Gaza, and there's a starvation, intentional starvation taking place, the UAE still continues as if nothing's wrong. In fact, they've increased trade. Trade has increased between Israel and the UAE to more than $3 billion, which is more than any of the countries within the so-called Abraham Accords. So there's a lot of question marks with the UAE. They're playing really dirty political games. And at the same time, and this is what irks a lot of people, is they speak out of the other side of their mouth. When they are at United Nations forums, when they are at Arab League forums, when they're having international discussions, they're calling for the freedom of the people of Palestine. They're calling for the liberation of Palestine. They're talking about supporting the people of Palestine. So they're speaking out of two sides of their mouths. And this is something everybody needs to be aware of.
Shukran for that, Khalid. Obviously, very, very strong sentiments, very strong words indeed. And, just talking about the level of complicity. And let's just bring Maulana Ebrahim into the discussion. Now, Maulana, in the memorandum to the UAE, it actually makes reference to Gaza being the moral litmus test of our generation. And we know while the international community is focused on Israel, while the international community is focused on those that are also that are directly complicit in the genocide, the likes of the United States, the UK, those that have been supporting this Zionist entity for a very, very long time. But very little focus seems to be on the immediate neighbors, on the Arab states, and as Khalid had articulated so well and very, very strongly as well, the UAE in particular.
Absolutely, and I think it's a misdiagnosis of the real state of injustice, or what are the feeding factors to the injustice that we see in Gaza, and that by having this protest, by having this discussion, we are broadening out the understanding of what gives Israeli crimes in Gaza the sense of longevity, what gives the Israeli crimes in Gaza the sense of no accountability. And a common question that has been asked by many people, seemingly when you look at the large numbers of people who've turned out for protests around the world, the very high profile solidarity actions, the ICJ case, the fact that consumer boycotts have, spread like wildfire all over the world, and there's mutinies even within the big governments of the world, against the policies of their governments. People would still kind of scratch their heads to come to the bottom of this answer. When there is such a groundswell seemingly against the Israeli entity, why does it manage to be able to act the way it does? And one of the contributing factors, or one of the reasons for that, is the very engineering. We have to remind ourselves, the very engineering, the political and geographical engineering of the Middle East by Sykes-Picot from the very beginning. And just as Israel was, through the British mandate, being the midwife for the Israeli project, and the Israel comes into existence, and it was a means to destabilize the region, a means to have a colonial entity in the heart of the East. Likewise, the entities that then were existed by the patronage of former colonial masters, whether it's in Egypt, whether it is in the Gulf, whether it is in Jordan and the like, were placed there, just to keep their own privileges in place and keep their populations at bay for the wider colonial or US Western-led domination project for that particular reason. So if one wants to see tangible change in Palestine, yes, BDS speaks to, and the popular pressure from all over the world speaks to the change and speaks to the pressure that's put on the Israelis from within, the crippling of the Israeli economy, accountability for Israeli military crimes. But if, on the outside, you would have all of these entities that are basically in it for their own survival, they would see the floundering of the Israeli project, the floundering of the Zionist project, as something that then threatens their own stability and their own privileges. So we need to understand from the beginning that these are states who are not just, acting out of incapacity. They're not, supporting the Palestinians because they feel weak or they feel threatened. No, they do act the way they act by design, because the very existence of Israel, the very existence of one colonial entity supports other colonial entities in the region. And that's what we need to emphasize by this particular action, to broaden the understanding of what is keeping Israel afloat, what is keeping the Israeli crimes afloat. And a separate part of this discussion then goes to speak to what Francesca Albanese has, stunningly brought on the world stage in recent weeks, although it was on the agenda of activists for a long period of time, which is the role of organized business, the role of organized trade in propping up the Israeli economy. So I think those two elements come together in our discussion about Dubai and the United Arab Emirates, because you have an entity that by design wants to keep its own privileges, wants to suppress the authentic will of the peoples of the region, and at the same time it has been a poster child for business ties, for unscrupulous business dealings at the expense of the values of justice that everybody seeks to achieve in Palestine.
Shukran for that, Maulana. Paul, I'd like to bring you into the discussion. And I think you and I had a discussion this afternoon ahead of this broadcast where you raised the issue of the framing of the narrative, and you spoke about the ties between the United States of America and Israel. And also you made mention of one or two protest actions that you had actually attended. Now, in terms of the framing of the narrative, we know that the United States has been an active partner, even in terms of framing the Abrahamic Accords, and that was during Donald Trump's first term as the President of the United States of America. But just looking at it from your angle as a journalist and your reading into what is happening at this point in time, what is playing out, and one of the issues I raised with you was the need to voice our protests against the likes of the United Arab Emirates, and also at the same time where we see that the Emirati normalization with Israel, as Khalid had mentioned, is not passive. It is obviously active, but also a deliberate move on the part of the United States of America together with Israel to shield Israel from accountability.
Yes, thank you, Inayet. I'm glad to be here. And, you know, we might ask ourselves, why protest the UAE? After all, we know it's Israel and the USA who are the primary guilty parties. But the UAE is very much involved with all of these terrible crimes. And I think the question we ought to ask ourselves is, what kind of world do we want to live in? And just to add on what has been said, the Abraham Accords is an attempt at an alliance between the most reactionary states in the Middle East or West Asia, between Egypt, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, which has not signed on yet, although they're not officially allied, they are technically kind of allied to Israel. And Israel, of course, too. And, you know, you're right that it's all about image, because the Emirates has this great marketing campaign. We see Emirates on the T-shirts of football players. They have this great airline and so forth. It sounds like such a great place. But after what I've learned in recent times, I don't think I'll ever visit them again, even in passing. The UAE is one of the most repressive regimes in the world. They torture people, they arrest people arbitrarily. For instance, you cannot even display any clothing or items in solidarity with Palestinians in an airport of the UAE. There's many cases which I can mention. But again, here in South Africa, we are still free, whatever problems we might have. And so we're going to protest. In the UAE, this is not even possible. You cannot even criticize the government or their policies. The repression is so intense that any attempt at criticism will be shut down before it even happens. And it's really a nightmare country. I want to just highlight one example of this. I don't know if you guys have heard about Abdul Rahman Yusuf al-Qaradawi. This man is an Egyptian Turkish poet who criticized the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt and their shameful collaboration with the Zionists. What happened was he was detained by Lebanese security forces, and they extradited him to the UAE. And this was 6 months ago. And ever since then, he has been disappeared. So this is an extremely disturbing precedent that's being set. This is what they are trying to do to us. They are trying to create a world in which elites are unaccountable to the public. And so it's really up to us as ordinary people to fight back against this horrific oppression. So all of these things are connected.
Well, certainly, thanks for that, Paul. Sister Shamshad, just to bring you into the discussion now, I know for a long time we have been talking about the UAE and its complicity. But as Paul mentions, brilliant at marketing and the way they've marketed their country, either through the airline, all the glitter and the glamour, the glitz and glamour, the getting into the Guinness Books of Records for the largest New Year's bash and fireworks display in the world. All of that has been playing out for a long time, and many people have actually been caught up in the glitter and the glamour of the UAE. And after having seen what has taken place, particularly in the last 21 months, clearly the calls are there, and the calls need to be very, very strong for people to get a wake-up call and to reveal the true face and the true nature of what the UAE is all about. Yet we find that people haven't come to terms with this. And I'm sure, together with this protest, together with all the research that has been done, together with all the material that is already out in the open, people need to start waking up to this reality.
No, absolutely, Brother Inayet. I think it's a matter of consciousness, level of consciousness, whether it is being raised or not. I've said this from the very first discussion that we've had in respect of Egypt as well. You can only get involved and understand the suffering of the people and not the genocide, now the Holocaust, if your consciousness levels are raised. So you carry on as if life is nothing has happened, but something has happened. Heedlessness needs to stop. And part of the heedlessness that we see is the kind of opulence that is being displayed in Dubai. But that's just one aspect. I want to come back to one very important point. We must understand that the entire Al-Aqsa flood was because of precisely this, the normalization that was happening between the Arab states and Israel under the tutelage of Trump. And what is shameful is that since 2023, in fact, to now, there's been an 11% jump in trade relations between the UAE and in the United Arab Emirates. And if you do visit the United Arab Emirates, like I did as a transit, or had to stay one night for some business, you will see that there are a lot of Zionists very comfortable in the UAE, more than any other country. You've been to Egypt, you see some of them there at some of the tourist resorts, etc. But you see them active in the UAE. And this is the result of the normalization. And October 7 didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened precisely because of the speed of which the normalization was happening between Israel and the Arab states, is particularly with regard to the UAE and Israel signing the normalization. And that alone has a whole list of conditions and what it entails, part of which is the irrelevance of Al-Aqsa to the people, to the Palestinian people. And if October 7th didn't happen, the world would never have known the complicity of the UAE in the entire scheme of things, because they do speak with the forked tongue. At all the United Nations resolutions, they're standing for the resolutions against Israel. But when it comes to actual in practice, in daily life, in trade, in relations, etc. I mean, they have not expelled the Israeli ambassador. That should have been a start. But if you look at it's as if the suffering of the people of Gaza means nothing to them, particularly the suffering of the women and children, particularly of the starvation, the maiming, the killing, the starving, of the terrible famine, man-made famine that we are experiencing is worse than the Holocaust we have seen in history. And I've studied history, and I can tell you the world has never seen anything like it, in full view of the entire world, in full view of the media, and the killing of journalists, etc. I mean, at least we're not asking you to send your army. We don't know how opulently lazy your army is, but the fact of the matter is, the simple request is stop your collusion. This evil collusion needs to stop, and that message needs to go through. If anything, has this done nothing to you, that your Arab brothers are dying at the hands of your very enemy that you are sitting at the table with? So this point needs to be driven home. We need to tell them, stop idolizing Tel Aviv. It's an imploding state. The world hates them. The world hates and have seen Israel for what it is. The world has seen Zionism, the evil serpent of Zionism. It needs to stop. You need to understand it. You're sitting at the wrong table. What would it take? Is money so much more important? Your trade relations so much more important than the killing, the suffering of 2 million people in Gaza? Now far less than that, because of the famine, because of the slaughter, the torturing, the burning, the maiming, the bombing, the blasting. When is this all going to stop? By you colluding with them, you're actually giving them the gun in the hand and say, kill me, kill them. So have you not even learned from the most recent incident in Suez, where the Arab tribes got together and they put up a gallant defense? That's another discussion, but something needs to stop. This heedlessness needs to stop. Whether it is here in South Africa that's supported, or whether it is in the United Arab Emirates. But if you know, the Emirates is synonymous with opulence. But that shouldn't take away humanity. And we're not condemning the people of United Arab Emirates. It's a very migrant community. A lot of people from all over the world have come for greener pastures. We understand that. But the leadership of it, you have the means. I mean, Dubai was nothing but just one village that was on the coast. Today you have these skyscrapers. They can very well come down. If in history will teach you, we said this to Bashar in 2018. You think you have the support of Israel and everybody to do what you are doing to your own people. A time will come when you will have nothing. The time came and it has passed. He can't come back. He is a leper among the Arab nations. UAE is fast becoming that. And I think the silence of fellow Arab communities and countries is also very telling. And it's something that needs to be alerted. But we must never lose sight of the fact that the whole Al-Aqsa flood, the entire war or genocide and our Holocaust that's playing out is because of the normalization that happened between especially the UAE and other Arab states. It was going to hit Saudi Arabia, and that's when October 7 happened. So we should never lose sight that everything is related, nothing operates in a vacuum, and this heedlessness needs to stop. Your brother Khalid has spelled out clearly, and Mullah Ebrahim has been sending up beautiful, very pertinent, very politically correct, collusion, collaboration with UAE and Israel. But I think what is important as humanity is for us to stand together and say, you need to stop this evil collusion, because you've just given the bombs, the ammunition, the military hardware in the hand of the oppressors, who's coming not just for the people of Gaza, but they're coming for you as well. So they need to be told that as well.
Yes, Jazakallah for that, Shamshad. I know, Khalid, you're going to have to leave us shortly, but just before you take leave of us now, a lot has been said on this panel discussion, a lot has been written, and a lot has been exposed, a lot has been revealed over a period of time. And I'm not too sure if any country in the world has actually gone after the Emiratis by way of protests, and particularly with regard to their complicity and their betrayal of the cause of Palestine. Perhaps this may be the first year in South Africa. And let's just talk about the protest in itself and the messaging of this protest, Khalid.
Sure. I think I just want to echo what was said before me, and I think the key word here is normalization. There is no normalization during a genocide, and you can definitely not normalize a relation with an aggressor, the likes of which we've probably never seen before. The levels of depravity that are being displayed by the Israeli savages in their intentional murder of men, women, children, journalists, Muslim, Christian, destruction of infrastructure, anything you can possibly name. There's no limits. Just when you think that there can't be something worse that they can do, you open your phone and you see new depths that they lower themselves to. So this is a depraved nation. Polls that were ran in Israel not too long ago display more than 80% or 85% of the population in support of the ethnic cleansing in Gaza. If you consider that 10 or 15% of the population are native Arabs who are Palestinian, then that tells you how many of the population stand up for the policies of their government. So Benjamin Netanyahu is the devil incarnate. We know that. Everybody calls him that, rightly so. But he's not acting alone. He is a representation of the people who elected him in the first place. This must be understood. Benjamin Netanyahu, Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, and all these other head-banging right-wingers are all a representation of the people of that country who cannot keep turning a blind eye to things and pretending things don't happen and being ostriches and putting their heads in the sand. It doesn't work that way. There is no normalization. Now, the UAE wants to hold relations with people like this. The UAE wants to have iftars in Tel Aviv at the embassy under the banner of brotherhood with people like this, with leaders of the so-called settler community who just last week, I mean, they've been carrying out attacks in Masafar Yatta against, under the full watch of the Israeli police and attacking Palestinian villages. Last week, they killed a Palestinian American youth, 20 years old. This just goes unchecked. So these are the friends the UAE wants to keep. These are the brothers the UAE wants to keep. And I personally think that for the UAE and other regimes who have a similar mindset, it's about building their own empires. They are not concerned at all about the lives lost in Gaza or in Palestine or anywhere else in the world, which is why the UAE does what it does in Sudan, which is why the UAE feels free to destabilize Libya as well, and anywhere else they can get their dirty hands on. So I think those two need to be understood. In terms of the message for Friday, we hope this is the start of an awareness campaign, an education campaign for ourselves, for the public, and whoever else we have access to highlight this genocide cannot take place. Israel cannot do what it's doing without active support and without complicity of others. And the UAE is probably the leading, supporter of Israel, albeit in the background of this particular genocide. So this needs to be made very clear. And we hope people develop an understanding and they start holding people accountable. The UAE is there because we give them the prestige that they desire. This facade of the UAE that Paul spoke so well about, it's all a facade. Behind all of the bling and the buildings of Dubai, there's repression taking place. Ask any migrant workers from Bangladesh or from India or from the Philippines what life is like in Dubai, and they will tell you what life is like in Dubai. We glamorize it. We give Dubai the prestige that it wants. So we need to take that back. We need to take our humanity back, as Sister Shamshad has said. There is no humanity in Dubai. You cannot be holidaying, having an opulent holiday when a few kilometers away, kids' limbs are literally being shredded off. This is a turning point for humanity, not just for the Muslim world. This is a turning point for humanity. How much longer do we allow ourselves to turn the cheek while this is happening? Because I guarantee you, when in a generation's time or in 2 generations' time, when our grandkids are learning about this dark period in human history, they're going to ask their parents, but weren't you living during this time? What did you do? So that's something we need to take home, each and every one of us. And I hope all the listeners and the viewers will consider that, at least in terms of our relations with the UAE and the lifestyles that we've chosen to lead.
Well, shukran for that, Khalid. I know you got to take leave, but we do appreciate you taking time out, and we will continue, inshallah. But for now, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Yes, Maulana, let's just move on. And I think, what is important for many of us to understand is we see all of this playing out, in front of our very own eyes, whether we're talking about normalization, whether we're talking about cyber surveillance, whether we're talking about Dubai with the Emirates censorship, hosting Israeli war criminals. All of that is playing out right now in front of our very own eyes. But there is a long-term plan. There is a bigger agenda, and particularly looking at Gaza and the collaboration with the UAE and the Zionist state of Israel in terms of a post-war Gaza. And that is starting to surface and feature more prominently, and it is becoming blatant, it is becoming open that there is a longer term plan through this collaboration between Israel and the UAE, which many don't know about or haven't come to terms with.
Yes, indeed. I think it goes to what Shamshad mentioned earlier, relating to, the excellent point that she had made relating to the role of, the Tufan al-Aqsa, what happened on October the 7th in terms of the resistance operation against legitimate military targets. And we take a few steps back at the UN General Assembly of 2023, where Benjamin Netanyahu stood in front of the United Nations General Assembly, and he, produced this very audacious map which he showed to the world of, how all these states are integrating. It airbrushed Palestine completely. It took out the West Bank, suggesting full-scale annexation, and it hinted at that many of the players in the region had already rubber-stamped this particular plan, and we were going to see dramatic movements going ahead. And the resistance had actually spoken about this in their communiques about one of the reasons that escalated the need to do something dramatic to once again recapture the narrative for Palestine. Now, operation and its unprecedented success, again, as I emphasize, against military targets, and lots of the suggestion that civilians were harmed by that has been debunked so conclusively. And the Hannibal doctrine and everything that Israel did to kill many of its own has been laid bare by many investigative reports since then. But we found that after that, the Israelis obviously suffered a setback, and what they then did after recovering the initiative, after stalling, managing to stall resistance forces through ceasefires and the like, was now dust off the old plans. Number one, for full-scale genocide in Gaza. And that plan has never changed, although there's an idea propagated that the Israelis perhaps were willing to tame their demands. We found that after a period of time, they're still moving in the same direction, pressing the population from the north towards the south, concentrating them there, hoping that they could be pushed over the border into Egypt, or they could be sent all over the world. So one was full-scale domination of the Palestinians under the cover of Gaza, simultaneously annexation in the West Bank. And it's staggering to note the statistics of what has occurred in the West Bank in terms of a drastic takeover of land under the cover of what is occurring in Gaza. Just last week, again, we had the Ebrahim Mosque in Hebron, where a very dramatic move was taken. The sovereignty or the custodianship of that mosque, which has historically been the Islamic Waqf, was passed over to the Israeli settlers very quietly but very strategically under the guise of what was happening. And then in the general region, Israel is taking this opportunity to be able to reshape the entire region, take out any forces who are seen to be dangerous, seen to have autonomy of their own, and then replace it with mini Israels or mini entities, mini militias in different parts of the world, who in different parts of the Middle East, who would be able to serve Israeli interests. This is what they have pursued in Lebanon. This is what they've trying to pursue in Syria. And that's why the point that was made earlier on is so important, that by the UAE throwing its lot in with Israel, by throwing its lot in with the United States of America, it is misreading the situation, that where people would feel that this is the strong party, and by a party acquiescing to their demands, they would be granted protection. To the contrary, this is a moment where Israel seeks full-scale change and full-scale elimination of any attempts at sovereignty and strength across the Middle East. And when one country is done with, the next target could very easily be another country, even if it has shown signs of wanting to acquiesce with the Israeli state. And this was spelled out quite clearly in what Bob Woodward had reported in his book relating to some of the private discussions that took place between Arab leaders and U.S. envoys, during the course of the Biden administration. The UAE, for example, said that their concern, the UAE leader, Mohammed bin Zayed, said that his chief concern was not the mass killing of civilians, but that these images have the potential to be able to trigger unrest in their societies and derail this project. He said, also as quoted in that particular book, that Hamas must be destroyed, and we need to be able to give the Israelis the time to be able to complete this particular project. So overall, it's a project now for full-scale domination, full-scale change of the power dynamics in the Middle East, so that these any force that could be considered dangerous to the Israelis would be eliminated. The division of Syria is on the agenda. Turkey may be on the agenda. Pakistan may be on the agenda. Egypt itself may be on the agenda. That's from the geopolitical sense. And on the other side, it's also a project for the minds of the region. One is a model that's put forward by Dubai. This is economic advantages, economic privileges in exchange for giving up your political autonomy and giving up any semblance of justice. And the other is what Gaza represents, and how Gaza has re-energized popular forces of justice around the world. From all continents, from all religions, Gaza has re-energized this idea of throwing off the shackles of colonialism, throwing off the shackles of neo-colonialism with its bare means, standing up for more than almost 2 years against the Israeli oppressor, and it still hasn't bowed. And therefore, it's also this battle of narrative, the battle of the UAE wanting to have a depoliticized world where people surrender their justice for economic incentives, or people like Gaza, on the other hand, who are fighting for the narrative, not of land like Gaza, but a preservation of the dignity of the entire humanity.
Yes, shukran for that, Maulana. Paul, I think, as Maulana Ebrahim speaks about the narrative, and I just want to focus for a few minutes on the media narrative, particularly with regard to the United Arab Emirates. Now, we know the mainstream media obviously will not discuss what we are talking about, or what we're hearing tonight coming through from our panelists as well. And as a journalist yourself, in terms of this narrative, the reframing of this narrative, when things are just so open, when things are just so blatant and unfolding before our very own eyes, when we talk of complicity or whether we talk of betrayal. And there's just so much that has been said by Maulana Ebrahim and also the other panelists this evening. Just looking at it from a media perspective, and also looking at media here in South Africa, have we really come to terms with the harsh reality that is facing us?
Look, I mean, it's difficult to come to terms with. I'm not going to lie. But at the same time, despite the fact that the media is complicit and the media tries to paint a picture, now I think the whole world is waking up to the reality. The cat is out of the bag, as they say. And the only people left supporting this genocide in the whole world are the elites in the USA, in Europe, and as we're discussing, certain elites within the Middle East. There can be no turning back. Israel is never going to be a normal country, and everybody realizes that. You can't deal with these guys. It's now a war for our humanity. And I think what we have seen is that nobody trusts the mainstream media anymore. Very few people buy into the narrative of the mainstream media. I myself rarely read what they write, except to see their deception and lies. But I mean, it's been extraordinary, as has been discussed, that Israel keeps plumbing to new depths of depravity. But I've really seen a shift in attitudes, especially in the last few months, and I think we're going to see a greater shift going forward. Because as the depravity reaches new heights, people simply realize what is at stake here. This is a vile experiment that's being conducted, and people realize that if we permit this to happen, then what future do we have? And as was also mentioned, despite all the power, despite all the wealth, all the military power in the world, you cannot defeat the human spirit. And ultimately, this is what the fight that we're fighting is all about. Even the mainstream media, even the Western mainstream media, cannot deny what is happening anymore. So really, we're at a massive turning point in history. As was mentioned, there's never been anything like this in history. So it is difficult to analyze, and it's difficult to think about what's going to happen in the future. And it's also easy to feel hopeless in the face of such a terrible assault. But like I said, the human spirit will prevail.
Thank you for that, Paul. Sister Shamshad, to bring you back into the discussion. And I just want to focus a bit on what is it that the UAE fears so much about the Palestinians, to go to such levels where they've got this deep-rooted ties in every manner and form that one can actually think about, with a brutal apartheid, fascist, supremacist regime like Israel. What do they fear most about the Palestinians? Is this ideological? Do they fear their own thrones? Do they fear the cause of the Palestinians, impacting on their people? What is it that they fear most?
I don't know if they fear anything so much as what they love. They love money. They love image, they love materialism, they love opulence, they love a certain status. And that image, that very image is being questioned. I'm just looking at the statistic that was done, a poll was conducted in January 2024. And it was done by the Arab Center in Washington, D.C. 67% of the other people in the region believe that the UAE Emirates, the United Arab Emirates approach to Gaza is wrong, bad. It was said bad or very bad. And that image is being tarnished day by day. And this is my point I always make, is that civil society has the power to move governments. That is in the region. In Dubai, in the Emirates itself, there's growing discontent. Now, in order to burst that discontent, there's only one way, is to show that you are in sync with the cause of the Palestinians. But by signing the Abrahamic Accords, you have done a serious mistake, because they thought you could sidestep the Palestinian issue, which is, I think, very short-sighted, because the Palestinian issue is a core issue. They've been then emphasizing two-state solution. They've been trying to appease the population. And, Emiratis going overseas have been labeled. Just like how the Zionists have been called out, the Emiratis are being called out. I don't know if people are keeping their ears close to the social media and to the reports of people traveling out from the Emirates and going out to other countries in the Arab region, I might say. They've been tarnished and being called out as Emirates. You are doing something very bad towards the Palestinians by having signed the Abrahamic Accords, by having the trade relations, by increasing the trade relations that you have with as I said, was an 11% increase in 1 year. So they have been found wanting. They are concerned about their image. They are concerned about the backlash that we are getting. There has been a Gaza, we call it the Gaza backlash. There has been, and this regional black combined with the regional black, backlash. So they're trying in some ways to show that they do not have that relationship with Israel, because they said in the media recently, we are very angry with Israel because they promised a two-state solution, which hasn't happened. In fact, they have increased the settlements. So how could they have ever trusted the treacherous state as the illegitimate state of Israel? How could they? How could they trust Zionism to keep to any treaty? Israel has ignored and actually been in contravention of countless United Nations resolutions. Its treaties mean nothing to them. They act with impunity. I mean, has the UAE not learned enough? Maybe this, our effort, our tiny effort, is to not just a regional and a local our backlash, but an international backlash now, to say that we are now displeased with the kind of relationship seemingly that you are having with Israel, and you need to stop that. And I think if anything, Brother Inayet, it is that's something that they fear, the Palestinians, is what they love the most. Is they love money, they love opulence, and the image is being, the whole edifice is being destroyed. And I am telling you, Brother Inayet, I've said this before, and I'm saying it again, 2027, we are going to read Salah in Al-Aqsa, inshallah. But in the process, they said in order for anything to get better, it gets worse. So we're in that process, we're in the area where things are getting much more worse. We are seeing things we have never seen. And it's not that the Emiratis are blind, but we have to ask them, are you blind? Are you heedless? Have you feeling for the Palestinian people? Have you feeling for the Palestinian cause? Not only them, but Morocco, Sudan, as well as Bahrain has signed the normalization, the Abrahamic Accords for normalization. But they are all collusion. So I think we must work in step now to go to the next and the next and next embassies. But I think we shouldn't lose hope, because not only the region, but within the Emirates themselves, there's growing discontent against, and they are talking out against it. If people have their ear, I'm very active on social media, the Friday night, and you see the Emiratis voicing their opinions, which in the past was not there. But they're beginning to voice their sentiment and their sympathy, the people I'm talking about. And that's why I say civil society has the power to move governments. They are voicing their discontent with the government. And there's a huge dichotomy between leaders and civilians. We can't hold civilians accountable for what is happening at the top level. It's not them that signed the normalization treaty or the Abrahamic Accords. At the end of the day, the normalization accord means nothing. Even the Emiratis themselves are saying, what did we sign normalization for? What was it for? Because Israel has not kept its side of the bargain. It has not stopped the settlements. It has not created a two-state solution, which was part of the normalization treaty, so-called treaty. But has history not taught them anything? That Israel has contravened every treaty when it came to the rights of the Palestinian people. So what October 7 proved, that peace treaties, dialogue, conferences, etc., don't work. It's just a waste of time. Israel would attend, give all sorts of promises, but it's the first one to be treacherous and to contravene those very treaties. What worked for the Palestinians now, after 77 years, what only works is the language that has been meted out to them, which is armed resistance. And we can't say that they're terrorists, because according to any response to any occupation, you have the right to respond with resistance. So we can't hold the Palestinians accountable for the method they're taking. If the Emirates are in the same situation, you think the people of I'm going to stand still and say, okay, come in, you enter from the front door, we'll go out from the back door. It's not going to happen. People will stand up. Maybe the leaders may cave in. But it's been a process, Brother Inayet. If you look at history, and they say a person who doesn't study history he has no understanding. You don't know where you're going if you don't know where you're coming from. When the Crusades could not defeat the Muslims from 1187, after the Battle of Hattin, they decided they're going to change their strategy. They're no longer going to fight them on the battlefield, they're going to fight them on the mind. And they removed the leaders that stood up against them. Every single Arab leader that stood up against Zionism was assassinated very cleverly, with the collusion of all the CIA, FBI, MI6, etc. What we left with are those people who are condescending to themselves, but they think that they are people who are talking peace. You can't talk peace with Israel. It does not know the meaning of peace. It only knows the meaning of violence, occupation, destruction. They are in the stage of annihilation, they believe. They've occupied, they've taken a territory, they've taken land. All that's left for them to do is annihilate and reoccupy with their people. But they don't know that the resistance is far from being diminished. What we are seeing now is exactly what's been played out since the Crusaders could not defeat them on the... if you came to man-to-man combat, there is no competition between the resistance fighters and the IDF. You put 10 minutes is too much for them, they'll be annihilated. But because they have the military superiority, which is military hardware, which these countries are supporting them with, that is what we need to bring to bear on the world. That those countries, whether they are Middle Eastern countries or Western countries or Asian countries or Indian countries, they need to be called out. That you have given them the bomb in the hand, you have given them the gun in the hand to say, go ahead and destroy the Palestinian people. But what is amazing, we've had wars in the past, 6-day wars, the Arabs were defeated in 6 days. We are almost 2 years into this conflict, and we find the resistance as strong as ever. If it has not been for the superior military might and the inability of the resistance to have surface-to-air missiles, etc., it's not a balanced war. It is an occupation, it is an onslaught, it's a Holocaust. So they go for soft targets, which is civilians now. Our responsibility in the scheme of things is, as civilians, for those civilians who cannot stand up, we are the civilians of the world. We'll come together and call those out with your collusion against the innocent people of Palestine. We have the right to resist, and we are going to stand and call you out and say, stop your genocide, because you are the ones that said never again, but you are the ones that doing it, And that's another discussion altogether.
Yes, Sister Shamshad. In fact, and this is exactly what will be taking place on Friday at the protest action as well. People standing up. And Maulana, I know we are running out of time. We've got about a minute as well, because I've got to head through for my next interview. And just finally, Maulana, I will give you the opportunity, looking ahead at Friday, and perhaps, obviously making that appeal for people to come out in the numbers, to be part and parcel of this protest, because this is absolutely important. This is crucial. This is going to make a very, very powerful, a very profound statement. I think Malana is frozen. Yeah. Sister Shamshad, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Okay, maybe I'll just ask Paul. Obviously, just to make that appeal to everyone as to why it's so important to support this initiative. You've got about a minute, Paul. Unfortunately, time has run out.
Quite simply, it's a fight for humanity, and I think everybody, even people who don't know history, who don't understand the complexities of history, everyone can see what's happening. And so, what are we going to do about it? I think everybody can instinctively realize that this is not right. So let's show up and send a message. And ultimately, I think that Israel and these corrupt regimes will fall. They are sowing the seeds of their own self-destruction. And we're there to show our voices in solidarity with the Palestinian people. And we will continue on the fight.
Well, thank you for that, Paul. Yes, Malana, just very quickly, final thoughts ahead of the protest.
Thank you so much, and all the other panelists have made excellent points. I just think this is the time for the move out of these social media echo chambers, where everybody is saying that we are against starvation and everybody's appalled by starvation in Gaza, but it would do something tangible to be able to show and to be able to satisfy your conscience before the Almighty, before yourself, before generations to come, that you actually did something to be able to stop the starvation and the depravity that's playing itself out in Gaza. So a particular call for everybody, particularly at this moment. There are people who are dining with the Israelis as starvation eats up Gaza. Raise your voice against them. And while the target is the UAE, we don't forget the ultimate target, which is ending the genocide.
Yes, I think we lost Maulana Ebrahim Moosa, but I think we've got that message, and I'm sure over the next day and in the build-up to the protest action that is taking place on Friday at around 2:30. In fact, the appeal is going out. In fact, I know it's on social media as well. I think everybody knows about this protest. A number of organizations, the Action Coalition is actually put together as well. So we trust and hope, inshallah, that this protest march is going to send a very, very powerful statement, inshallah. But for now, we'd like to thank you, Paul, for taking time out with us this evening, and also to you, Sister Shamshad. Assalamu alaikum to you as well, and also to Maulana Ibrahim Moosa and Brother Khalid Vawda, inshallah. So looking forward to Friday as well. Another day where I think is going to be a milestone for us here in South Africa, but also possibly will set the tone for global action, particularly with the likes of the UAE and many of the others who have been complicit in this genocide. So for now, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukran for having us for the night. All the best.
Thank you for a great discussion.
Well, that brings us to the end of the first hour of this evening's broadcast. In conversation with myself, Inayet Wadee. Next up, we will be joined by Yusra Ghanouchi, the daughter of Sheikh Rashid Ghanouchi. And so stay with us. Don't go away.